Healing from sexual betrayal is not something you're meant to navigate alone. Shock, confusion, and fear are common responses to an experience that can deeply disrupt your sense of safety. Welcome to Rise, Hope and Healing from Sexual Betrayal. I'm MaryAnn Michaelis, a licensed clinical social worker, certified sex addiction therapist, certified partner trauma therapist, and a recovering betrayed partner. Each week, we feature conversations with leading experts in betrayal trauma recovery, offering insight, validation, and practical tools to support your healing. If this episode supports you, please consider sharing it. You may help someone else feel less isolated and more understood. And if you're ready for additional support, we offer an online course and therapist-led groups created specifically for betrayed partners. You can find these at humanintimacy.com. We are glad you're here. Welcome to Season 2 of Rise, Hope, and Healing from Sexual Betrayal. I'm MaryAnn Michaelis, a licensed clinical social worker. Last season, Dr. Skinner and I were really focusing on the very basics. I just was betrayed. What do I do? So just survival. And so I'm super excited to step into our Season 2. And Season 2 is going to look a little bit different. Season 2, I'm going to have different therapists joining me each week. And Kris Cristiano is our first Season 2 guest joining us today. Kris, welcome. So excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. This is so fun. I'm so glad that you're doing this and doing this resource.
Oh, I think it's really needed. Kris, I would love for you to introduce yourself because I know that our listeners and viewers probably don't know you. And so give us a background, who you are, what you specialize in, what keeps your boat afloat. Yeah, just help us get to know you a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah. Hi, I'm Kris Cristiano. I'm an LCSW, licensed clinical social worker out of Denver, Colorado. Originally from San Diego, moved to Colorado during 2020. So that was a really fun transition. I'm also a certified sex addiction therapist. I work with both the betraying partner and the betrayed partner. And I also work with couples to help them rebuild trust and in themselves and in other people and heal the relationships.
So for our listeners and viewers, I've known Kris for several years. We've done a lot of learning and growing together. And one of the things I love about Kris is she is so good at just seeing things clearly. And one of the connections I have for you is you talked one time about throwing a rock in a lake or a pond. And you talked about how when you've been betrayed, there are always ripples and they will always reach the bank of a shore at some point or another. And that's some fantastic wisdom that you shared with me. But what do you want to talk about today, Kris?
The biggest thing that I see that always comes up is trust. And so many times after betrayal, people are like, how do we get back to trust? How does she get back to trusting me? How do I get back to trusting him? And when you think about trust, it feels like this nebulous concept where people are constantly trying to grab at sand. And so I've gone through so much of the research and literature and books, and I've put together a whole sheet of 25 signs of real recovery, of these rocks that people can pick up, they can look at, they can examine, and they can start seeing, okay, out of these 25, I'm seeing 2. And then I'm like, okay, 3 months net from here, 6 months from here. Go back through that list and constantly see if you're seeing more of those rocks appearing in your partner, in your relationship, in yourself, in those areas. Then all of a sudden you're like, okay, trust is starting to rebuild, and you don't have to give it freely and abandon and betray yourself in order to do that. You can see the results from other people's behaviors.
So you're saying you've been working on helping clients figure out, can I trust my partner who's betrayed me? And here are some tools, or here are some signs or something tangible that I can hold on to say, yes, yes, tick the box. This is happening. One of the things I think is important, and probably for this conversation here, is to deconstruct trust a little bit. Oftentimes, my clients believe that trust, love, and forgiveness are the same thing. Or their partner will say, well, if you love me, you should trust me. And I think it's super important, especially starting this conversation, to deconstruct the three. They are not the same thing. They are three completely separate principles. But how do you see them differently?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can love somebody and not trust them. You can forgive somebody and not trust them. Forgiving is about your own individual letting go of the resentment, letting go of the pain, and being willing to step yourself on another path and not, I think, kind of cutting yourself with the pain still and being willing to let go and pass that on. It doesn't mean forgetting and it doesn't mean stepping back in a poor relationships. When this evidence of the trust hasn't been established, then you're just you're letting your boundaries down. You're putting yourself in a situation expecting something to shift when there's been no evidence for that to shift. And you can still love somebody. You can still see like this person is hurting, that I want this person to be better. I care about this person. I want the best for them, but still not allow them into certain areas of your life or even allow them back in your life, period.
Yes, I think we have to be able to understand they're not the same and they're different branches. So I got to do some different work in each area. But trust is necessary to rebuild the relationship. But it is a process. It's something that's gradual and it takes a lot of time. I always go back to the story of the marble jar with Brene Brown. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I love that story.
Yeah. Do you want to share it? I've got it, but if you, is
No,
that
please. It's been a long time. So I know I'm going to miss some parts.
okay? Here's how I remember it. You can maybe help add to it if there's anything I'm missing. Brene Brown talks about her daughter, Ellen, being in elementary school, I think, and she had shared something really important with her friend. I think it was just before lunch. And they went out to lunch. And by the time they came back in from lunch, there was kind of some tittering and some whispers. And her daughter found out that her friend had shared whatever the secret was. She was devastated. She was betrayed. She had shared a secret. She had shared something very vulnerable, very important, and everybody knew about it. And she was pretty distraught about it. And Brene Brown talks about trust. So she uses this example. And I think she talks about the school teacher saying, like, hey, what's going on, everybody? Uh, I'm noticing everybody's a little bit more rowdy or noisy or whatever. And we often see some behavior and conditioning in elementary school. Hey, when you're good, we're going to put a marble in the jar. And then we'll get a party when we fill up the jar. And Brene Brown says that when we are betrayed, it is just like we're tipping out that entire jar of marbles and we have to start over again. So what I thought I had already built up, nope, we lost it. Trust comes one marble at a time as we're going. And when we lose it, we have to start back at ground zero. We're not starting at 3/4 of the jar already full. No, what did I miss, or what do you want to comment on that or expand?
No, I mean, you actually remember a lot of details that I didn't. But I think something that's very important to remember that's very specific to betrayal trauma is so many times I will have the partner that did the betraying, they'll come in and they're like, we've had 6 months of this. And then they have one flip or one major breach in safety in the relationship. And they're like, I feel like we're starting back at square one. And I have to remind them, you are, because that one thing just dumped the entire marble jar out.
Yeah.
Now, because there's been consistency for 6 months, and it's your heartfelt consistency, the marbles might go back into the jar a little bit faster, or maybe your partner only dump out half the marbles out of the jar. But especially within an intimate relationship, that trust is so fragile that it's not the same as any other relationship that you have.
Mm.
Has that been your clinical experience?
Yes, as I'm hearing you say this, what I'm connecting with is another part of this, and that's complex trauma. So the way that I view complex trauma is I get triggered or my marble jar gets dumped out right here. And my whole entire dump truck of all of the marbles in my entire life of trauma that I've experienced suddenly get dumped out as well. And so I usually talk about it like a dump truck of manure. And okay, I'm in this relationship and I'm trusting, and then something happens and my body goes back to, oh, here it is again and again and again. And complex trauma means all of those experiences that haven't healed, they show up again. And so I'm trying to sift through manure, trying to get my head up, and it's under my fingernails, it's in my nostrils, and it's in my ears, and it's everywhere. And I just can't even breathe. And so we're talking about trust, but I think we also have to recognize that, especially with complex trauma or in betrayal that's happened over and over and over again, it's not just like, oh, here's this one little slip, it's not a big deal. It might be, yeah, it's one slip, but there was the one before that, and the one before that, and the one before that, and the one before that. And so it's cumulative and it really builds. And we have to understand the difficulty of healing from betrayal trauma is this trust. And it might go back to my parents, it might go back to my childhood, it might go back to when I was bullied as a child. So this is very complicated. And I want to be very clear to our listeners and viewers as we're talking about trust. We're not saying, hey, you need to start trusting right away. That's absolutely not what we're saying. So, Kristen, what would you say? What are the signs? Where do I begin to say, oh, maybe I can trust? What should I be looking for that would help me? And where do I start to trust?
I reference a tool that I use a lot. It's called the Intimacy Pyramid, and it's by Dan Drake and the Rab Smith couple, and they are phenomenal. If you just Google Intimacy Pyramid, you can go to their website and check it out. But the very foundation of it is honesty. And so I talk to a lot of couples, and this has a lot of different components. There's the transparency. So, are you willing to give your partner your location? Are you willing to have passwords open? Are you willing to be completely honest? But part of that honesty is also being honest with yourself and having that full accountability. And so, one of the signs of recovery on my list that I give clients a lot is accepts responsibility for actions by doing what they say that they're going to do and making it right if actions don't match up with their words. The goal is to have their words and their actions match. And so many times, people who have been in the addiction seat or in the betrayal seat, they've been lying to themselves for so long to justify what they've been doing. And they've used those lies that they told themselves to lie to their partner, and their partner starts to believe it. And so then they're being gaslit. And then their partner takes that information and their partner starts gaslighting themselves. And so there's this whole series of lies that are going down the chain in the coupleship that needs to stop. And so, as the one that did the betraying, as they start being really honest with themselves and their intentions and what they were doing, instead of going, well, you weren't giving me attention, the relationship was an issue. I thought we were headed for divorce. You didn't give me enough sex. I mean, all the things, these are all classic. It's interesting. I'll have clients come in and they're like, no, 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 my story's different. And I'm like, try me. And they start saying some of the same phrases. And I've written down several of these phrases and I tell clients, these are the same exact things. You're not any different. And it's not to tell you that you're not important and that you're not special or anything like that. You do have value. Absolutely. Every single one of my clients has value. But we're human and we have so many more similarities than we have differences. And that's the reason why therapy works so well. It's because we see these cases again and again. And so sitting there and helping them deconstruct these lies that they've been telling themselves helps with the safety that the partner has. Because when the partner who's been betrayed starts seeing that internal work on the other end going, you're right, I was lying to myself. I was picking fights with you, so it would justify my acting out. I was making you out to be that you were this bad in my head when you're not. So it would make me feel better about my behavior. And when they get really honest at that core level, that's a huge heart shift. That takes a lot of time. And that is a process that happens incrementally over years. Right at the start, it's the transparency with phones and technology and location and those types of things. And not in a controlling way, but in a I'm willing to be as honest as possible way.
I think there are a couple things here that I'd love to comment on, Kris. And first of all, as you're referring to this intimacy pyramid, that base that you're talking about, that honesty, what I'm hearing is this is really about safety. And we can't build trust if we don't feel safe. And so I would say that psychological safety has to be at the basis of this. And here's why. If my nervous system is dysregulated, which it usually is because I've been betrayed, and I don't know what's up and I don't know what's down and I don't know if I can trust you because there's a pattern of dishonesty and lies and manipulation. Boy, it's sure hard for me to even see clearly. And so, for me to even begin to trust you, what rubric am I going off of? In the past, there's a pattern of behaviors that have not been trustworthy. So, I have to get to a place where, yes, that honesty is so important because I have to be able to, as you said, see that you're doing the things that you say you're going to do. You're being where you say you're going to be. I have to see these small things, and they are like check boxes, but I also want to be clear. There's the check boxes of I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. I have clients who can check boxes all day long, but they're not in recovery. They might be in sobriety. And so I'm going to go with a very non scientific explanation of this because I don't have the word. Maybe you have some words you can pin on this for me, Kris, but it's really about our gut. Does my gut feel safe? So when I hear you say you went to your meeting, okay, great, check it off the box, but do I feel like something's different? And this is our mirror neurons and our spidey senses. Well, spidey senses obviously isn't a clinical term, but I'm really listening to what my body's picking up. I think Dan Siegel calls it neuroception. So looking at what is my body telling me? And what do you want to add to that, Kris?
I love that you said safety because the bottom level is honesty. The second level is safety. If you don't have those two things, the third one, which is trust, doesn't get built. And so many people would want to jump to the middle of the pyramid and they're like, well, I want intimacy. I want to feel like we're connected. But if you're not willing to be honest and to build safety, the trust isn't going to happen. And then those top two pieces of that really deep intimacy, they can never form. And I also love how you brought up the check boxes. As a CSAT, we work off of a list of 30 tasks for the betraying partner. And I've had so many like, oh yeah, I've done that, check. I've done that, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And I always get on my clients. I'm like, this is not a work of tasks. This is a work of heart. And it really doesn't matter. You can come into session, you can lie to me all you want. I'm the hired help. I am not the main attachment. You're coming in for my advice so you can actually work on things with the real attachment, with the person that really matters at home, not trying to impress me. And so if you're not shifting and changing in your heart, your partner is going to pick that up. And it really doesn't matter if you think you're doing the work. If she or he does not feel that, what good does it do? And so it's a deep, deep work of heart and a real big self evaluation. One of the signs of safety that builds trust that I have on my list is, are they able to identify and share feelings and go beyond the feelings of just mad, sad, or glad? Or they'll say that they're angry, but going beyond those feelings by digging deeper into themselves to find out what is really inside and what makes them tick. He or she can then share what is inside themselves with others. And that's with a whole supportive network. Are you going to group? Are you with a supportive place that you can share these things? Some type of a brotherhood or a sisterhood where you can be vulnerable and practice that vulnerability until your partner that has been betrayed is ready and able to hear that stuff. But it's developing those emotional skills of being able to tap into what are you feeling in your body? Because there was something that you weren't nurturing in yourself that led to the acting out. I felt something yuck. That person over there or that picture over there made me forget that yuck. And I started relying on that for that safety and attachment versus a real human being, my partner that I actually made a commitment to.
I want to shift a little bit back because I can hear our listeners or viewers saying, like, yeah, but my partner's not doing those things. Or I'm not sure. My partner is so good. I have no idea. I was blindsided by their behaviors. And so I have no clue. And so I want to make sure we're talking also about self trust. And I'm wondering, Kristen, how does a betrayed partner build self trust? Because I think this is really, really essential that we talk about. What are your thoughts on that?
Going back to the analogy of the rock hitting the water,
Mm.
it's interesting because everyone sees the entry point of where the rock hits the water. Everyone sees the betrayal, but people are really slow to see every rock, tree, branch, leaf, fish, everything in the water that ripple hits. They see the surface, but everything underneath it at a very cellular level has completely shifted. And so you don't just have that one trauma, it hits every trauma and stirs up every trauma in your life before it hits the shore. And it completely changes you forever. And so a lot of the betrayed partner work is really digging in. And there's a lot of anger and resentment about this because they're like, I was fine before this. I didn't have trauma before this. I've genuinely had partners come in. They really have had good lives. They've had good childhoods. They've had good parents. They've had good experiences in their lives. And they end up dealing with betrayal. And they're like, I didn't ask for this. I didn't do anything to deserve this. And I'm like, you're right. You didn't cause the car accident. You didn't cause the damage that happened to your body and your brain. And at the same time, you have to get yourself to PT. You have to get yourself to the doctor. You've got to do the work in order to heal. And I think that's a huge piece of that justice that kind of keeps people stuck of being able to heal within themselves, because you have to be able to examine all those rocks and trees and branches to figure out where else have you not trusted, or where else have you struggled with trusting yourself, or just any kind of breach of that trust. And being able to see clearer. And that's a lot of trauma work of being able to look inside and be like, okay, how do I get on steady ground again where I can feel it in my body? My body can feel calm. I can feel confident where I'm at. I can feel confident in difficult conversations. I can see clearly. Because one thing that happens that harms people from being able to really see that is the concept of betrayal blindness, where people weren't able to see what was actually going on, or they would see something and then they would again gaslight themselves, or they didn't want to fully see. There's a lot of different ways that that shows up. And if anyone's interested in that concept, there's a book, Blind to Betrayal by Jennifer Freyd, a remarkable book. And one thing I love about that book is it talks about that betrayal and that betrayal blindness in so many different aspects of our lives. It starts back in childhood, and it sounds bad, but it's like, where are we lying to ourselves about the relationships from our childhood, or from work, or politically, or in the government, or in our communities? It's not just in one area, it's in every area. And this is painful work because once you start to see, you can't unsee it. And I always warn my clients when they come in, are you really ready? Because when you start to see things, you're not going to be able to unsee it. Are you ready to have the consequences of that? And so it's a long process, but when you get there, your body calms. You start to be able to trust that gut sense and that neuroception, what you're talking about earlier. There's a reason why we have these same phrases: butterflies in our stomach, pit in our stomach, heartbreak. It's like we feel these same sensations in all of our bodies, but it's when your body's able to calm and you're able to feel that gut sense of, I am seeing what I'm seeing, I'm picking up on something, or I'm feeling something and I know how to go and get the answer. That's a different level of confidence within ourselves that really builds that self-trust with ourselves.
There's so much there, Kris. Thank you. And I'm so glad that you shared your rock in the pond analogy, because I had like this much of it. And I love that analogy. I just want to break this betrayal blindness down a little bit more. I believe part of the damage of betrayal trauma is that part where we start to second guess ourselves, where we, as you called it, betray ourselves. And so when I say, something feels like it's off because there's something going on, and my spouse says, no, everything's fine. And I say, oh, okay, I must have gotten that wrong. Right there, I tried to challenge, I tried to question, I tried to see what's going on in this relationship. My body told me something was off. My partner says it's not. And so I have to decide, do I believe him or am I wrong? And when we come back and say, okay, it must be me, that right there is a betrayal of self, because our body told us something, but we said, nope, nope. I checked it out with somebody else, a person that I trust, and they said it wasn't. Or even if I was like, no, I'm pretty sure, I might also choose, because it's an easier path, to say, no, I think I'm going to blame myself. I'm going to carry this myself. Because if I do that, it allows me to still have some power. Okay, I can fix it somehow. But if I say, hey, is everything off? And my partner says, yeah, something's off. Oh, my whole world might start crumbling down right then. And so understanding, oftentimes we may choose to be blind, and it is a choice that we make. It might be a subconscious choice. We often learn this in childhood because a child needs its parent or its caregivers to provide them with safety, security, protection, food, clothing. They rely on them for their survival. And because of the hierarchy of powers, the child can't challenge that relationship. If there's abuse, they still need that parent who's abusing them to take care of them. And so they may say, there must be something wrong with me because my parents yelling at me or abusing me. So there must be something wrong. Maybe I can fix that. Maybe I can be better, which gives them some power and ability to try and fix it, even though it's not theirs. And so I think as we're talking about self-trust, it is really about coming back and saying, like, where have I not been listening to myself? And I want to be very clear. This is our season 2. So we're shifting from I just found out I was betrayed to now I'm doing some work. And I think one of the most important parts of this work is learning to trust myself, learning to trust what my body's telling me. And I have to do that by learning to slow down and to listen, to get really personal with my body. As you said, that pit in my stomach, what's going on internally? And so many times we are, I would say, almost having an out of body experience. We walk through life totally disconnected to what's really going on in our body, and healing from betrayal trauma, learning to trust ourselves again, I do think comes back down to, oh, I got to reconnect with myself. And another aspect of this that I think is super important is we need other people on the outside to say, no, girlfriend, that is gaslighting. What are you talking about? No, that's crazy talk. We need other people to help us see what we don't see because, as you said, we're blinded oftentimes. And maybe that's a form of self-protection so that we can stay in the relationship. Because if not, if we challenge it, it might be over and we might not be ready for that. So I want to make sure that we're talking about this in a very non-judgmental way, just saying, this is the work and it takes time. And I want to invite our listeners and viewers to take the pace that's right for you. I believe I've got to learn how to trust myself before I can trust other people, because I can't gauge where they're at if I don't even know where I'm at. What are your thoughts on that, Kris?
I love everything that you said. And one way that I explain betrayal blindness is because there's so much shame, because people feel like that they're being blamed for that choice versus looking at it as your body and your brain are designed to do this. Because as an infant, you cannot take care of yourself. As a 2-3-year-old child, you are not going to be able to survive. Thousands of years ago, when we were living in tribes, if you were kicked out of the tribe and you were by yourself, what are you going to do? You're going to die. Yeah. And so it's like this betrayal blindness keeps us part of tribes. It is a survival technique. And so if you're sitting here feeling like, oh my gosh, I made this choice and I feel shame, and the codependency that people start throwing around, stop shaming yourself. Your body and brain did exactly what it is designed to do. And now it's just deconstructing and relearning.
So you're saying, trust yourself, trust what your body and brain were doing without you even knowing it. Stop judging and start trusting that you were surviving. I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly. And so many of these negative things, shame is another one. They're all learned in relationship. They're best unlearned or healed in relationship too. And so when people try to do this work on their own, alone, it doesn't go very far. You have to be able to talk to people. So I loved when you were like, you need to get other people to give you that reality check. Find different groups, find betrayal groups, find addiction groups, find these groups, find close friends, people that you were able to throw this stuff around and be completely vulnerable and honest with in your healing. And this goes for both the betrayed and the betraying. You will not be able to do this on your own. And so the more people you have on your team, the better, because then the stuff that led to the addiction or led to the acting out or the hurt from the betrayal and the betrayal blindness, the shame, all of those things, they'll be able to be healed in those relationships.
As we're getting ready to close up today, talking about trust. All healing is relational, and we have to come back to safety and rebuilding our relationship with ourselves so that we can rebuild the relationships with others. I love Sue Johnson's work on interdependence because when my partner isn't there for me, I have to find other places where I can still get the validation, the clarity that I need. And what we're talking about here today, Kris, is the very basic building block of recovery. We've been talking about realization in season 1. And in this season, we're really focusing on this rebuilding phase. So do you have any final thoughts, anything that you want to wrap up with as we get ready to close today?
I think the biggest thing is throughout your recovery, be patient with yourself. It's a process. I have so many people that come in and they're like, how long is this going to take? When do I start to feel better? And it's different for every single person. Everyone comes in with different skills and different recovery and different places where they're at. We forget that sometimes the pain in the tunnel, we're so quick to try and get to the other side of the tunnel. There's so many beautiful lessons that are learned that we don't pause to really reflect on the lessons in the tunnel. And this is just a new way of living, just like the water has been completely shifted for forever. You've been shifted for forever too. And so many times, years down the road, people really reflect back and they're like, I really do genuinely like the person that I've become. Yeah, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, but I wouldn't give up the lessons either.
Thank you, Kris. That was really, really beautiful. As you were saying that, I was just thinking of beauty from the ashes, that phrase that sometimes we refer to. And my closing thoughts for today are, if you have recognized that, wow, I have maybe been disconnected from myself or judgmental of myself, I invite you to give yourself space and grace to say, I was actually really doing the very best that I could with the tools that I had. And we hope that the tools that we're talking about today will be helpful for you, just to give you some insight and to validate where you've been. I'd like to share just a very simple exercise for just rebuilding trust with yourself. And what that will look like, you get to define, but I'd like you to sit down after you finish listening or watching this podcast and just write down, what's one thing that I'm going to do, one thing that I need to do, whether it's today, whether it's tomorrow. And I invite you to do it, to figure out what is it that I need to do. It doesn't have to be like a huge, ginormous climbing a mountain. It doesn't have to be anything like that, but just something simple, because I think we often forget I can set intentions and do those. And as we do those, once again, we talked about building trust as doing what we say we're going to do, being where we say we're going to be. And so even rebuilding that trust with ourselves, what is one thing that I need to do that I can intentionally rebuild my trust with myself? So I invite our listeners and viewers to step into that space. Kris, are you able or willing to share the resource that you were talking about today? Is that something that you'd be willing to share? And we
Yes,
can
absolutely.
Okay, so we'll have that attached in our show notes. And if you haven't already, I would really love to encourage you to go to Rise Hope and Healing from Sexual Betrayal on humanintimacy.com. There we've got a full course that is based on tools to help you through this journey. And also on March 13th and 14th, we're going to be having the Human Intimacy Conference. And Kris, I think you're going to be speaking at that. Is that right? Presenting?
Yes. You guys have so many amazing resources. And one thing I love about this community is everyone has different perspectives on different things. And you guys are just doing beautiful, beautiful work.
Oh, thank you, Kris. As are you. And I get to see that. And I'm so glad that our listeners and viewers get to see that. So joining us in March at humanintimacy.com. Thank you so much for the conversation, Kris, and can't wait to have you back again.
Awesome. Thank you so much.